Do we feel a little differently about TCU? Vegas said yes. Texas was back. Texas ain't back.
Yes, I do feel differently about TCU. I guess we should start right there because that was my favorite thing about the college football community, Andy, is those games. And I know that everybody does it with the NFL too and the NBA finals and stuff, but every weekend, the entire college football community that I surround myself with on my Twitter is watching it at the same time. We got jokes, yes. comments, everybody's at the edge of their seat, and we got that in that Oregon game.
Oh, it was something.
But TCU had control of their game in the background while everybody was obsessed with that Oregon ending. Mm-hmm. And I got to say, as impressive of a win as they could possibly have right now.
Well, yes, because what was the committee worried about? Game control. Who controlled that game? TCU's defense.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it was a different type of win. It was on the road in, I don't care what the rankings say or what Texas's record was, but that's a very tough game for TCU to win no matter what.
They'll still be the highest fourth-ranked team. I mean, I loved that the committee's rankings last week were the Ascalon rankings. Like, that was my favorite part of it. That Texas and Notre Dame were way higher than they should have been. Because clearly the committee members like the advanced stats. They won't admit it. They're not saying it. But we can tell when you're using S&P or SP Plus or FPI or Massey or Sagarin. Like, we can tell that you are weighing those heavily by what you do.
Yeah, and the thing that's interesting about TCU is that, when you say, does your perspective change? I think it does, but I also don't think that they're in a position where any of that matters. The only thing that matters is whether they win or lose.
Right, and the thing
because
is,
if they lose, they're done. So,
yeah,
they can win every game by one. Our perceptions can change. They can stay the same. They control their own destiny with 3 winnable games coming up for them. So, but I thought that this was a revelatory win for them. That was a hard-fought game. It was on the road, and I got to tell you, Andy, I thought that Texas's defensive front for that first half or for most of that game looked like an SEC defensive front, the way that they were playing. I mean,
from a talent standpoint, they have talent. Like, they have what they need. They actually seem to be ahead of Oklahoma personnel-wise for the move to the SEC, but they still can't put it all together. Still can't beat. I mean, as good as TCU is, they don't have the star ratings that Texas does, but TCU's a better team, has a better culture.
But just like, even if you throw all the Texas stuff that we always talk about out the window, the way that Texas's defense was playing in that game, I thought TCU was a walking L. And I was texting Sam Kahn, our texpert, who was at that game. I was just like, it's only a matter of time before these wheels fall off. And I was wrong the entire time, all the way through. I thought that they were that Texas's defense is playing well enough that, Bijan would hit a big run or Quinn Ewers would make a big play. And, if you would have told me that TCU only scored, 17 points?
Yeah.
That before the game, that would have made me like Texas even more. And I told you even before the game started that Texas was going to roll them, I thought.
Yep.
And I was wrong completely. So the fact of the matter is that does it change my perspective of TCU? Sure, because they've had a pretty tough road of it. And not only that, they went on the road with a hostile environment. The Gary Patterson thing is kind of something that we joke about, but that's a real, that's a real thing.
From a standpoint of someone on the other sideline knows your personnel very, very well.
And the number one thing that's ironic about this whole thing is that Gary Patterson, who has a statue outside of TCU, his number one regret, and I don't know if regret's the right word, but the thing that he would remember most bitterly was being left out of the playoff in 2014. He gets fired in the middle of last year. He writes the folk song about it, and then TCU in year one of the Sonny Dykes era is knocking on the door of the playoff, where there will be no debate if they win. So there's a lot to unpack there. But TCU has won in a lot of different ways. Sometimes they had game control, sometimes they didn't. But despite being hit in the face, I think that there was some stat that Texas had a tackle for loss on 8 of the first 17 plays of the game or something. They were kicking their ass.
Right.
The defense on offense.
TCU was getting the ball in good field position, but
and going backward.
I think going into the second half, the amount of plays they'd run in Texas territory, or maybe before the first field goal, the amount of plays they'd run in Texas territory, all of those plays were averaging like half a yard per play.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens when your quarterback's getting sacked on every other play. And then even when Duggan fumbled the ball and they scooped and scored at the end, TCU gets the ball back, and you think that Texas is going to get a shot with a stop to push overtime, and what do? Slam the door on the face. Texas doesn't touch the ball again. Like, good teams close games out, even in weird scenarios like that. So I have a tremendous amount of respect from TCU, and I think the beauty of this conversation is that regardless of what I think or you think or anybody in this chat thinks, they're driving the bus here.
Absolutely. And so, I kept saying all week, I don't think Texas will get him. I think Baylor's going to get him. Not after tonight, I don't. K-State manhandled Baylor. And now I think TCU's path is pretty clear. Now that they're going to have to play somebody good in the Big 12 title game, kind of looks like it's going to be K-State again.
Yeah. And beating the same team twice is a really hard thing to do in the same year, in my opinion. But I just think it's time that we stop viewing TCU as a dead man walking in the Pac-12, just waiting to find its loss, and start respecting them as a team that is just better than these other teams in the Big 12. And you know what? They might still lose. It's college football. It's really hard what they have to do at the end of the year, but what they've already been through and the way that they won this game, even an ugly game where it looked like they were going to be facing some major issues, they won that football game, and not only did they win it, they took control of it after they almost lost control on the road in the game's final 5 minutes. So they've got long, rangy receivers. Duggan's a playmaker. Their running back is great. The backs is incredible. Good, yeah. I think that it's just like hard because there's two ways of having this discussion. One is, do you have a different perspective of TCU as it pertains to whether or not they could beat a team like Georgia? I don't think my perspective on that has changed.
But my perspective on everybody beating Georgia hasn't changed.
But do you think TCU would beat Ohio State or any of the other teams that are like firmly in the mix? Would they beat Tennessee or some of the other teams that we're talking about here? Would they beat Michigan? I don't know. I think those are two separate discussions, but do they belong in the playoff, and have they earned that spot? If they win their next 3 games, I think it's an unequivocal yes.
Yeah. I mean, they're in if they're undefeated. If they've got a loss, there's going to be a debate. Tennessee's going to be tough to overcome for any one-loss team. I'm warning everybody now. Like, just get your minds right for that, because the committee's going to like Tennessee's wins better. So get your minds right.
Is there a scenario in your mind where TCU could lose a regular season game, win the Big 12, and still get in?
Yes, Tennessee loses to South Carolina or Vandy.
And that's it.
What if Michigan lost to Illinois and then won the Big Ten? I don't know. They'd still make it in if they won the Big Ten. So I don't know.
It just I don't know. Like, the thing that I think is an interesting discussion, and I don't know if we have the answers for that right now. Maybe let the dust settle from today and see how things line up. But is there a scenario where TCU can play themselves into some insurance, or play themselves in a situation where they don't have to be perfect, or is it just kind of like take the analysis out of it and win your games?
I think they got to be perfect. I think win your games and you are in. There will be no debate. You might even be number 2 or number 3, depending on what happens with Georgia and what happens with Ohio State and Michigan. But just win, and you are in. So you have to win 3 more games. They're all 3 winnable games. One of them will be against a team you've already beaten. So you got to look at it that way.